Hi, I'm Dave from the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. I make YouTube videos. You know that one showing you the difference between overdrive and distortion effects? That was one of mine. Now, when I recently learned I had the opportunity to interview Crispin Weir from London's legendary Regent Sounds, I jumped at the chance. I wanted to talk to him about working in music retail in the heart of London and get an insight into his experiences of working as a bricks and mortar music retailer. And I got that, but I got more. I got much more. But hey, enough of my yakking. What do you say? Let's interview. Right, so for today's PhatPhish Guitar Studio interview, I'm delighted to be joined by Crispin Weir, who's the head honcho down at Regent Sounds on London's legendary Denmark Street. So Crispin, hello, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Dave. How are you?
Good. Not bad, not bad, not bad. It's good to see people in guitar shops again after 3 or 4 months of that not being a thing. So it's a nice background you've got there.
It's been so good to be back. I can't
Good.
tell you. It's been
Good,
great.
good stuff. Okay, so I thought in these series of interviews, I'm trying to interview people from like different aspects of the music industry, whether they're working musicians, technicians, or whatever. For you, I wanted to kind of talk about the music retail side of things, but there's far more to Regent Sounds than just talking to a guy who runs a guitar shop. So I think we kind of need to kind of set the scene for this a little bit and talk about where you are, which is Denmark Street. So what is it about this 100 yards or so of London real estate that is so important to the music industry and the history of music in the UK?
It's very interesting. I don't know how it initially kind of came about, but it became like a magnet, to the whole industry within the UK. From about 1900 onwards, really. Lawrence Wright moved down here and set up his first publishing business, publishing sheet music and publishing songs. And from when he moved here onwards, it just became the place for music publishing, which obviously then went on to songwriting for many, many years. There's all sorts of songs and things published here. And from that, I mean, God, you'll know it's just endless. You got the music press itself, so many things. The NME started here, Melody Maker started here. Just endless people, musicians had their offices here. And then the studios, of which Regents really became the most sort of useful, I would say, studio in central London, and perhaps most importantly, the first real independent studio in central London.
Yeah.
So by being an independent studio, you didn't have any of the restrictions of the record companies or anything like that. And so it was so handy for all of the publishers on Denmark Street to be able to record here and just get an acetate, just hear what a song was like recorded. And so that was all took place here. It all happened in this room, and eventually it extended to downstairs as well. But the original studio was all here. And it's fairly incredible that all these years later, we're still in the same room, people making music here every day, It was a studio from approximately 1950 till the sort of mid 80s. Mm-hmm. So, the golden era, and obviously the roster of artists that sort of came through the doors is fairly incredible. So, all these years later, we still find out about people who recorded here and find out different things.
Yeah, because I suppose back then, some of the bands that were recording, it was they're now legendary names, but it was just their debut album. There was just another artist that was going through the doors. But they turned out to be Black Sabbath, or they turned out to be Pink Floyd, or something like that. And
absolutely, exactly that. I think because of where it was and because of its price, it was very affordable. And so as a result, people just loved it, and they were like, they could come in and cut a demo relatively cheaply. And because the sound was really good, everyone was like, wow, we can use this. This is great, So, that was certainly the case for Sabbath. Really good example. They just loved the sound of it, and they just thought, this is brilliant and cheap and cheerful.
Yeah. Because it's funny. I've got that little sign behind me there, the Denmark Street one, because I like Denmark Street. I'm a fan. I want to support it. It's for when I record videos. I've got something to set the white balance on. But I was I had a Zoom call with some friends over last summer, and one of them's not a musician, but said, What's Denmark Street then? So what's explaining it's this really important street in London for music. He says, is it so like Abbey Road then? I said, well, not really, because Abbey Road, all you could do there is go and record music.
Yeah.
Whereas Denmark Street, like you say, you could publish your music, you could buy the instruments, you could record it, go and do a gig at the 12 bar afterwards. It covered kind of the whole gamut, really, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they all seem to happen at different levels, you know. So, you know, first you had the publishing, then you had the songwriting, then you had the studios, and then you had the guitar shops, and then you had the venues. So it's been a funny kind of mix, but obviously they have all overlapped. Yeah. But what you really want, ideally, is obviously if they'd all been at the same time, then it would have been incredible. Yeah. But no, we've, you know, it's a real pleasure to be here, and I think the main thing is just all we've ever tried to do is balance. You know, it's a very important historical place where we are. Obviously, the street has huge history. The studio and shop itself has an amazing history, and then obviously, you know, we're just trying to balance being a good modern shop in that context.
Yeah, because one thing I like about Denmark Street is generally it's independent, and each shop kind of has its own vibe. You've got one store who just does vintage, somebody else who's like distributor for the modern instruments. You've got it's like that old like high street sort of feel where every shop does its own thing, even though you're all retailing musical instruments.
I'm so glad you noticed that. Like a lot of people don't get it, and they sort of say, "Well, why is he doing that? And why are you doing that?" But that's exactly it. It's like it has to fit. I refer to it as the department store. Yeah, you know, someone does first floor does this, second floor does that. You know, but if you don't have that, then you're not offering the whole range. You know, and that's how it works.
Yeah, because I remember like years and years ago, it's like the first time I was able to travel independently, you know, not going on holiday with my mum and dad. The first place I went was I want to go down to London and visit the music stores because I used to get Guitarist magazine and you saw the adverts in there for all the stores. And to be fair, in Newcastle where I was living at the time, there wasn't the selection of guitars. Whereas you came down to London, went to Denmark Street, it was like this near religious experience. There's all these stores, and then back then they were still spilling out onto Charing Cross Road, and you had All Bang and Strum It down at Seven Dials and the Marquee Club. I remember walking by, oh, that's the Marquee Club. It's a thing. There's so much just in that little area, and each, like you say, each got its own bit of character and brings something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very fortunate because I grew up here. So, you know, for me, it was like in my childhood, I just walked past all these places and always knew about them and loved them. And it's interesting you mentioned All Bang and Strum It. That was a fantastic shop. And I played at the Marquee, that second Marquee, quite a few times. And it was a wonderful era into the night. You know, the 90s was just brilliant. There was such a buzz around here then, you know. I mean, there still is. It's just obviously a very changing scene, and with it, the whole industry has changed. You know?
Yeah, because I guess for people who aren't watching this, who aren't from the UK, where you are, it's right in the heart of the West End of London. So it's theatre land. So it's somewhere central, but you've got all the like the pit musicians. It's like on their doorstep. All the jazz clubs and stuff in Soho. It's really well situated for like the consumer.
Absolutely, exactly that, as you say. I mean, you know, there's all the musicians from the theatres, as you say. There's all the people doing rehearsals nearby. We get a lot of people from the media studios for doing adverts and things like that. Little sound recording, you know, sound bites or whatever. People, little session guys doing stuff like that, and then obviously all the bands, everyone who's on tour. Generally pops through, you know, comes through, and that can be anybody from, you know, big A-listers to just, you know, guys doing tours in a little van. You know, it's really good though to have that cross section of people. It's what keeps it, you know, so sort of interesting.
Yeah, because I remember, you know, now and again you go into like stores in Newcastle and they might have a second-hand guitar, you know, unless it's, you know, it's been owned by somebody like Jimmy Page. It's not a big deal for you guys. It's just another guitar. Whereas in Newcastle, you see, it's an artist-owned guitar and they make a big thing out of it. But I remember being in, it might have been 60 a couple of years back, and they had a guitar, and I had a look at it, and that was owned by somebody. He'd been in like the top 10. It's the corner shop for the music biz, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I mean, in that way, it's difficult because you don't want to be blasé about it. You know what I mean? You really don't want to be like, oh, you know. But it is funny. I had a chat with somebody recently who sort of said, you know, your clientele. They sort of were making a guess about our clientele, and I thought, God, if they knew who our clientele was, like they really wouldn't, they were trying to sort of downplay the sort of people in the shop. And I just, in my mind, I was like, what? So Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp, David Beckham, Noel Gallagher, these are people who've come in the shop because they've been in the West End.
Yeah.
And they've come in to buy stuff and just have a look around. They haven't come in, do you know what I mean? They're just here, and we have a practice of not trying to just grab a photo with them and put them under pressure, because they're not going to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So, we like the fact that there's a kind of anonymity to that, and that people can come here and shop, relatively comfortably without having that kind of pressure,
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So, as we say, it's been a mecca for the music industry on Denmark Street. Regent Sounds initially as a recording studio. How did it get from being the recording studio to what we see now? What was the demise of the studio and evolution into the guitar store?
I think really in the 80s, the emergence of the bigger studios, the technological advances, obviously bigger desks, pre-digital. I think that was really the death knell for the studio at that time. I mean, funny enough, it's one of the eras I don't know that much about. I've spoken to a couple of the engineers who were here at that time. But I know most of the gear got sold off to a studio somewhere in Surrey, I think. And I think they just couldn't keep up. They needed to modernize. They didn't have the space. I mean, most studios at that time had slate drum rooms and, huge selections of mics, massive 48 tracks, and I think Regent's was just physically way too small. The demo demand had long gone. And of course, 4 tracks were quite commonplace. And then by obviously the emergence, I think ironically now, you could try and make a studio here, but obviously the emergence of home recording and that would have always knocked it out anyway. Yeah. So after it was a studio, it became a print shop for a while, which is a very unusual little thing that no one knows about this space, but they had like proper print machines in here and everything, sort of what they would call Xerox machines, but and then after that it became quite famously Helter Skelter Bookshop, which was run by the famous Sean Boddy, who is a fantastic guy, lovely music enthusiast who was really encouraging loads of fanzines and independent books. And it was a really great independent music bookshop. And then sadly, he passed on not so long ago. But the Helter Skelter Bookshop was great, but it couldn't be that much of a success because unfortunately, the rents are high. And bookshops tend to read a lot, not necessarily buy the books.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they went out of business, but it was fortunate for me because my old boss took it over. And then really when taking it over, we realized the history of it, and then I ran the place for him for the first 7 years. And then after that, then I took it over and I've been here another 11 on top of that. So.
Yeah, because we're talking about the character of the different shops. I mean, you look behind you, it tends to be the newer instruments rather than in the vintage. So what's your kind of your niche in the Denmark Street family?
We started this shop in 2004 with the premise of it being a kind of Fender specialist shop. Now, over the years, we've had lots of different things that we've added to that, but we've not really deviated too much from that one core thing. The difficulty when you've got the biggest brand in the industry is the range is so huge. Yeah. To try and represent it all. I mean, it used to be that we could do it, but now, again, the limitations of the space we have, it's really difficult to represent that whole range. So we've broadened into some other areas as well, pedals most notably, but Fender is still a very key part of what we do. New guitars with them. Gretsch also, which is kind of under the wing as well, and we've got some of the other smaller brands. But as you say, we fit very much in that sort of specialist area, limited edition, unusual colors, unusual finishes, and Fender custom shop. Which is something we've always really championed here. The other shops, as you said, it kind of fit into a slightly different mold. We got a couple of vintage shops, some more sort of focused, a couple of acoustic shops, and reluctantly, I mean, look, if we had more space, I'd love to do more acoustics, but the limitation is just within the space you have. But it's in the future. We'd love to get into more vintage, but as you will be well aware, it's becoming more and more difficult and harder to find.
Yeah, because you mentioned Fender Custom Shop, because over there, that black one is the one I got from you a couple of years ago now. And again, talking about like dealing with an independent or dealing with a big chain. Obviously, I'm up in the northeast. I'm not down in London all the time, so I tried to get a custom shop ordered through a local. It was a chain. I won't name them, and it took them about 2 or 3 months to admit that they cocked up even getting me a price. I got in touch with you guys. You turn the order around in about 7 to 10 days, and 9 months later, I was down there in London anyway, picking the guitar up. So I think it says a lot about you don't need to be a big chain store to be able to deal with the big boys. You can. There's not many people do Fender custom shop dealerships, and you do it, and you do it very well, even though you're operating from a much just a small independent premises.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. It really isn't. I mean, you have to. I think because the real key, probably the thing that we have that a lot of shops don't, is we're very service orientated. We've always been very service orientated. I mean, I'm a trained guitar tech. The shop manager's a trained guitar tech. One of the other guys is a trained guitar tech. So actually, as staff, we're all come from that sort of background. So we've always kind of toyed. The beautiful thing with custom shop is being able to kind of spec up your own things. Yeah. So we've always done that. You know, kind of just go for some slightly more unusual choices and some different colors and so on. That's a great thing. But unfortunately, you know, they're expensive guitars, and you know, a shop like this with high rent in the middle of the West End, it is difficult to have a very large stock holding for various reasons. But you know, we've managed to balance it. We make it work along with the rest of the range. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you, as a bricks and mortar store in a world of internet, I don't know if this is the last 12, 15 months has probably skewed this perspective a little bit, but how do you strike that balance between people who just want to sit on the keyboards and order an instrument versus come in, feel the neck profile, appreciate what it is that you're getting? How do how do you compete as a bricks and mortar in an internet age?
I think we've always kind of looked at it like no two bits of wood are ever the same, and no two guitars sound the same, and there's pros and cons to that, you know. But I think in reality, the tangible aspects of guitars and how they play and why they are the way they are, that's the main thing. And I think, you know, you have to have a lot of experience in playing and selling guitars to really understand the nuances, the really finer nuances. And whilst there are an awful lot of people in the industry who do understand that, it doesn't always translate into a sales perspective. So when you're buying from, you know, what we affectionately call the box shifters, you know, if you're buying from the big chains, you're often getting that guitar just delivered as it is, and there's not an awful lot of after service and all the rest of it. Whereas if you buy from us, you have 3 years of just free service automatically, and you can extend that anytime you want. And with our higher end guitars, that's a longer service of 6 years. The reason we do that is because we want to engage with customers. We want to talk to them about finding the right guitar. And look, it sounds unbelievably cliched if I say we just want to find the right guitar for the right person, but we do. I mean, that's the whole goal. Because ultimately for us, if somebody finds the right guitar and they're happy, they're stoked, and they may, you know, then come and buy an amp or a pedal or something else. Whereas if they've just got something and they're like, nah, you know, it's not that same satisfaction. That's how we've always worked it. We've always looked at service orientated stuff and really going into finite details with people. And that's why the custom shop thing really works with us, because we can spec up a custom shop with, you know, going through all the things, you know, fret size, radius, whatever, and just really making sure people know what they've got and they're happy with what they get, you know.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So looking slightly to the future, I mean, I remember reading things in the press about, oh, Denmark Street was dying, it was going to be flattened and turned into flats or hotels or whatever, but you're still hanging in there. You're still there. There's still shops on Denmark Street. I was, by the looks of something I'm seeing on one of the Denmark Street retailers on Instagram today, they're redoing the front of the buildings and it's all getting nicely cleaned up. What does the future seem to be holding for Denmark Street as we head forward?
It's fairly overwhelming. I mean, this project was the biggest project in Europe for the last, I think, 15 or 20 years as an engineering project. Yeah. It's the Crossrail development coming into London, and at Tottenham Court Road, which is just behind the street. as you know, and it's absolutely gigantic. It's a huge project. It encompasses 3 venues, 2 different hotels, about 30 or 40 serviced apartments that are for short let stay for musicians or music types or music promoters or managers or whatever. There's going to be all sorts of little installation spots and places and pop-up shops and restaurants and bars and you name it. And so it's a very pivotal point in the history of Denmark Street, because on one hand, you've got all this really exciting stuff happening. And then you've also got the tradition of the guitar shops and the music. And so all we're hoping is that we can balance the traditions that have always gone on here and sort of telling things correctly with the obvious commercialization that's going to come in. Yeah. So as it is, 7 years of development have made untold damage to the street and to the businesses on the street, ourselves included. You know, the shop was 3 times bigger 3.5 years ago. Yeah. And we've existed in this tiny premises for 3.5 years while the rest of the building was rebuilt and everything like that. But, you know, I'm pleased to say we're getting it all back in June. But a lot of the other shops on the other side, on the north side of the street, they're all cut down in half. And so it's been very difficult for them to sort of learn, you know, to be in a much smaller shop for forevermore. That said, you know, the landlords are really trying to build what they could call a music quarter. So, you know, they want to have the venues, they want to have everybody here, you know. So, as I say, I think if we get the balance right, it could be a really cool place in the future where you can come, have a look, play some guitars, find something you really like, go and see a band in the evening, you know, have something to eat, go to the pub, go to a club, stay on the street if you want, come downstairs in the morning, collect your guitar, you know, however you want to do it. So it will give you that sort of one-stop shop experience, which I think would be great, actually, to be honest. If you were coming down for a weekend or something, it'd be a nice place to stay, and you can come and catch a really big gig and maybe see some smaller gigs and maybe play yourself, because there'll be open night things as well. So I think, you know, long term, it has huge potential. The issue with all these things, which remains to be seen, is when you see the size and the scope of the outernet building and the development that's happening. So you're going to be coming out of Tottenham Court Road tube station and effectively walking into the biggest LCD screens in the world in an internal building with constant images that change and twist and advertise all kinds of things. And suddenly they'll show a film or split second of like men's final at Wimbledon or something, you know what I mean? You'll have all this, what you would think of something quite normal in Tokyo, you know? So it's going to be really advanced. So, I mean, in a way, it's a really good thing for the future of the street, because you look at it and go, well, that's kind of world leading, you know? Yeah. But in another way, as I say, when you look at the kind of shabby history of Denmark Street, you hope it's not kind of too clean. Do you know what I mean? It loses some of the legit, you know, the vibe of the place. Yeah. So in answer to your question, really, it's up to us to try and keep that legitimate angle here in the shops and still, you know, sell to musicians, as well as, you know, obviously celebrating the big history that's gone down here.
Okay, that's good. That's a more positive message than like a couple of years ago. I was hearing it's just going to be scorched earth. So the fact that there's still positive movement towards the music business and entertainment, that's a really good thing to hear.
There are a few hurdles still. I mean, the rents being the main one. You know, we're still in talks about that, and you know, there is a sort of plausibility with what you can do with MI retail. I mean, you know, it's not a huge, believe it or not a massively profitable business unless you're at a very big level. So it's difficult to try and, you know, reconcile with very high costs, but we're going to do our very best. And as I say, I hope we'll settle into kind of getting the balance right, you know.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm conscious of your time. I don't want to take up too much of your evening. So let's end it on a positive note like that. But before we go, the opportunity to do gratuitous plugging. So off you go. Name websites and social media presences, and
right. Well, that's very kind of you, Dave. So obviously regentsound.com. That's our main website. We are Instagram, Regent Sounds on Instagram, Regent Sounds on Facebook. We don't really tweet much anymore, to be honest, but we really do most of our stuff through Instagram, Facebook, and the website. We have a Reverb shop, Reverb /Regent Sounds again. And we tend to kind of use our reverb shop for some of the more unusual things we have. We might not have all our stock on the website. So we'll mess around sometimes. There's certain things are on reverb, certain things are on the website.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been great talking to you.
It's a pleasure, mate. It really
yeah, I really hope to be able to get down and visit and see you in person again at some point in the not too distant future. I'm to be honest, I think there needs to be another custom shop in my life, and I know where it'd be coming from.
Well, I tell you, you can welcome to spec up anything you want, and we just give you quotes. You know that.
Yeah.
But furthermore, we've got a lot of stuff coming, which is going to be great. Some really unusual bits. So you'll keep an eye out.
Okay, well, best of luck for the future. Hope the reopening and getting back to hopefully normal continues. And thank you very much for your time, Crispin.
Thank you so much, Dave. You take care, mate. All the best. Thanks a lot, man. Okay. See you.
Cheers. Now, I really enjoyed that interview, so thanks again to Crispin for taking the time to join me over Zoom for that chat. Like I said at the start, the original objective of the interview was to talk about working in music retail, but obviously being based at Regent Sounds, being based in Denmark Street in London, there's a much bigger story to tell, and I'm really glad Crispin was able to take the time to talk to me and share the story with you, so I hope you enjoyed that. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please click like down there. If you really enjoyed it and you want to see other videos that are posted on the channel, then please click subscribe, which is also down there, and click on the bell icon because it makes a thing happen and you get notified when I upload any new videos. You're welcome to leave a comment. I don't always get notified by YouTube when people comment on videos, so if you've got something specific that you want to ask me, whether it's about guitars, music, suggestion for somebody else for me to interview, you're better off going here, fill that form in, send your question in, and I'm guaranteed to see it and I can get around to addressing it in a future video. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.